to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and with that 3-0 win over Monterrey, your Philadelphia Union have clinched a spot in the 2024 CONCACAF Champions Cup. No more the CONCACAF Champions League, and now we got to get into that mindset of calling it a cup. But not a lot of takeaways from yesterday's game, a game that the Union should have won. So we'll go ahead and talk about my thoughts from yesterday's game. And I'll be honest with you guys, I'll be so happy once we can get back to our regular format of MLS coverage and, talking about blunder of the week, talking about news, talking about 3 stars, goal breakdowns, all that jazz that you guys have come to love over the last couple of years. But I guess before I give my thoughts on the game against Monterrey, I guess I should give my thoughts overall on Leagues Cup. Now that the competition's done, Inter Miami, of course, won a trophy. Lionel Messi, 10 goals in Leagues Cup. And of course, he lifts his very first trophy in his very first attempt at getting a trophy with Inter Miami as they beat Nashville 10-9 on penalty kicks. And that was definitely a very entertaining game. Happy that the Union's game started at 6 o'clock, and then by the time I was able to get home, I was able to watch the second half of the final. Saw former Philadelphia Union player Papa Pico score, tie the game up. Then, of course, you have a chance later on with Nashville, can't convert. And then literally like the last 10 seconds, Leo Campana has a chance for Inter Miami, goes around the goalkeeper, takes a touch a little too far away from goal, still has a chance, and hits the post. Unbelievable. But I don't think Leagues Cup could have asked for a better final than Nashville and Inter Miami put on last night. But it wasn't the Philadelphia Union. The Union weren't in the final, so how much do I care? Not much. How much do I care about this competition? You guys know that by now. And I'm not going to lie to you guys. I was definitely feeling all the tiredness, the soreness that my body was going through with 4 games in the last 12 days going up to Chester for this competition. Getting home the next morning and having work a few hours later. I mean, it got to a point there where it was extremely draining on my body. And I'm sure a lot of you guys felt the same way too, going to that many games. And I know there are some of you guys that don't live too far away from the stadium. Lucky you guys. But a lot of us that are traveling an hour or more away to get to these games, and then you got work the very next morning, it's taxing on your body. So I can only imagine how the players felt. And I guess we do have a little bit of an understanding because Mikael Uhre, I asked him after the game about this group's fatigue, tiredness level, and he gave me an answer. So I'll play that soundbite here for you guys in a little bit. But I guess, I hope that I gave you guys good coverage with the podcast and updates from Jim Curtin's pressers when I could attend them on Zoom. But I think my hope for this whole tournament was I wanted to see more Liga MX teams going far in the playoffs. Or we're not even calling them playoffs, right? Just farther in the competition, the knockout rounds. That's what we're calling it, right? And I don't think I buy the notion that some people are saying, well, MLS teams have now caught up to Liga MX teams in terms of talent. Because I think if you play some of those games down in Mexico, you're going to see a completely different tournament. And we all know the record, or maybe we don't know the record, of MLS teams since 2016 down in Mexico. 3 wins, 6 draws, 23 losses. MLS teams get smoked down in Mexico. And sure, part of that is because when the CONCACAF Champions League then, the cup now, is starting, MLS teams are still in preseason, while Liga MX teams are already been playing their season. And you can make the same argument for this tournament, sure, because MLS teams were already in mid-season form while Liga MX teams are just starting their season. So they're not as fit as these MLS teams. And I think I'm still a bit shocked to see how far Monterrey and especially Querétaro went in this competition with the amount of traveling they had to do. Monterrey in particular, Portland, Seattle, LA, Nashville, then Philadelphia. Now they're flying back to Mexico to resume their season down in Mexico. It's a lot of traveling that Monterrey did, and I guess when you factor all that in, it's no surprise that they traveled over 10,000 miles and they lost 3-0 to the Union. And for sure, we'll get into my thoughts about that game here in a bit. But I was really hoping that we'd see more Liga MX teams go farther in the knockout stage. And like I said, I mean, you had all the traveling that these teams had to do. They could never truly get settled in because it was play a game. Now we're going to go ahead and travel to another state and play another game. And that's really hard to adapt to. And I wasn't sure if MLS teams were going to take this competition serious. I thought we'd see a lot of rotated squads, but teams, for the most part, play their strongest 11. And we'll see how this competition hurts those MLS teams that got knocked out super early in the competition, not playing any meaningful games once they got knocked out. Will that impact their MLS season for the better or the worse? I think for the Union's case, I think fatigue's definitely going to catch up to them, and it's going to cost the Union going far in the playoffs. But it's just my opinion. You know, Jim Curtin always says that they love tracking the data, the analytics with their sports performance department, showing that, all right, well, if people are getting in the red zone, we'll rotate them. If they don't seem like they recovered well enough, we'll let them sit on the bench and we'll start somebody else. So Jim and his staff do a really good tracking fatigue the best they can. But I do think, we talked about it last episode, all the minutes the Union have played so far, all of those minutes are going to keep adding up. You're going to have a lot of this squad at 3,000 plus minutes before playoffs start. A couple guys are going to be over 4,000 minutes. They've never done this in their professional career before. And I'll be curious too. After the season, will we see players, the MLSPA, start speaking out about how this isn't good health-wise for the players, that this cannot happen again, that there's way too many games played, way too many injuries? I'll be curious if we see that kind of statement from the MLSPA at the end of the season. I know we had a couple of players in Europe talk about too many games being played. You had Rodri at Manchester City saying that. Rafael Varane at Manchester United saying the amount of games that they played, they couldn't be their sharpest. And they felt like they let their team down because they weren't able to recover as quickly as they wanted to. Their bodies physically couldn't do it. And I do think that's what we're going to see with the Union as the season goes on. I do think that's what we're going to see with other teams. And I do think you actually saw that with Miami last night against Nashville, where Tata played the same starting lineup the last couple of games. And yes, he's not like Jim Curtin and waits forever for substitutions. But when you're running out the same starting lineup every single game, you're going to tire out your squad a lot easier than a coach that's constantly changing things up. And I get it, right? Jim talks about it all the time where, yeah, the data shows you if you sub four more players from the starting lineup the previous game, bad results happen. But I guess in Miami's case, right, it was worth it. They got the first trophy and they're still alive in the semifinals in the US Open Cup with another trophy on line. And then they're focused on trying to get back into a playoff spot in league and see what happens from there. But I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see. Are the teams that got knocked out early in this competition, are they gonna feel rejuvenated come the second half of the MLS season? Is Cincinnati, they got knocked out pretty early. Are they gonna run away with this even more? It's definitely a fair question to ask, I think. But those are kind of my thoughts from this competition. I I, I mean, I don't care. I did not care for League's Cup. I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty neat seeing the three Liga MX teams come to Subaru Park. It was neat seeing their fans in the stadium. Maybe not as much as we saw with Atlas or definitely not Club America when they came in 2021. But it was cool seeing their fans walk around the stadium and all the teams applauding their fans for traveling and showing their support. I guess that's something if you do play these games in Mexico next season, you're definitely not going to have MLS teams, fans traveling as well as some of these teams had throughout the competition. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, if they decided, yep, no Leagues Cup next year, that's great. You won't see me complaining. But overall, I mean, I don't know. You guys know how I feel. I don't care about this competition and covering it the last month, watching a ton of games. I just couldn't be bothered. I really couldn't. I mean, it was cool, right? Having MLS, which seemed like it was on every single night, or Leagues Cup, sorry, on every single night. That was cool watching these games, but I don't know. Learning more about these Liga MX teams. That was neat too, because I'll be honest, hardly watched any Liga MX prior to this tournament. I knew the big top clubs, I knew their star players, but some of the lower teams, Tijuana, Querétaro, I didn't know much about them. So it was cool, I guess, in a sense, learning more about them. And maybe that was part of what Leagues Cup wanted was for Liga MX teams and their fans to learn more about MLS teams and vice versa. MLS teams and fans learn more about Liga MX. But overall, glad this tournament's over. And before we get into my thoughts from Philadelphia and Monterrey, I've got to give a huge shout out to Monterrey's manager, Fernando Ortiz. I know Jimmy, Skylar, and Jose Nunez, they gave shout outs on Twitter for this. And if you guys didn't see this, Fernando Ortiz, the manager, like I said, of Monterrey, before he spoke to the media, he went around the whole press room and shook the hand of every single person in that room, whether it be the union's people in charge of the audio, whether it be the League's Cup media people, whether it be the people that were just in there filming it, he shook every single person's hand and said, "Good evening," right before he spoke to the media. Jim Curtin's done that a couple times after press conferences, but absolutely have never seen a manager before the press conference come in there and shake every single person's hand. And that made me feel some type of way. It's like, now I kind of want Monterrey to do well in Liga MX. I want them to win the competition. I know historically they're one of the top three teams in the league, and some people are like, "Oh, you can't jump on one of the successful teams." It's a bandwagon fan. But when a manager goes out of his way, when he doesn't have to, right? His team just lost 3-0. He could come in there, say a couple words, and leave. But no, Fernando Ortiz did not do that. And that's a memory that's going to stick out in my mind forever. And I wish for nothing but the best for that guy. I hope that he's super successful with Monterrey and then he can get a job at a top club in Europe. He's from Argentina, so maybe he gets the job, the national team coach. I don't know, like I want nothing, absolutely nothing but the best for Fernando Ortiz just because of that small gesture. He didn't have to do that, but he did it anyway. And I know a whole bunch of other people feel the same way that I do. So, for people that weren't unaware of that, didn't see the post on Twitter about that, just wanted to make you guys aware of that because that is top class from Monterrey's manager. But let's go ahead and talk about the Philadelphia Union versus Monterrey game. As I've said a couple times now, the Union won that game 3-0, we know. And overall, this is the Philadelphia Union you expect to see 9 out of 10 times. And I know this Monterrey team changed the whole starting 11 because it didn't matter if they won this game or not since they had already qualified for a CONCACAF Champions Cup next season. But the Union still had to take care of business. Those players that started for Monterrey were there to make a statement to their coach, showing that they deserve to be in this team. They deserve more minutes than they've been previously given. That the coach has options off the bench. This is Fernando Ortiz's first season in charge at Monterrey, so he's still learning his squad. And so those players that started the game, just because they're not their regular starting 11 doesn't mean that they didn't have anything to prove. They had everything to prove in this match. And you couldn't have asked for a better start by the Union to see Chuchu score his second goal of this competition. And I don't know if Leagues Cup does a team in the tournament or whatnot, but Chuchu has to get into the starting 11. 2 goals, 3 assists. One of the most surprising players throughout this whole tournament. Outstanding performance from Chuchu. Makes Jim Curtin's job much harder with Ali Bedoya scoring off the bench yet again. How do you bench your captain? Jack McGlynn, fantastic performance. Leon Flock, Jim Curtin, we all know, loves him. And this competition is good. Managers like this, having options off the bench, making their job more difficult. They don't want to have a Miami situation where it's like, okay, we already know our best 11, we're going to throw them out there every single time. You want players that are pushing each other every single day, whether it be in practice and games, and making those decisions that much harder for coaches. And I think that's exactly what Jesus Bueno did in this competition for Jim Curtin, who has said that he's deserving of a starting spot. Ali Bedoya scores 2 goals. You see the impact that he has when he comes off the bench offensively for this team. Brought a spark in the second half. How do you not start him? Yeah, you can look at it in one sense and say, hey, look, well, if we bring Bedoya off the bench, at least we have an offensive spark. That's one way of looking at it. But Ali's a true professional. He's not going to want to come off the bench. He's the captain, for crying out loud. How do you keep him on the bench? And I know. I did an episode. I asked Jose and Dave, has Bedoya lost his starting spot to Jesus Bueno? And Dave went on a great rant why he doesn't believe Ali Bedoya should be playing for this club. But you mean to tell me a guy who has scored back-to-back games now, has provided a spark? Like, you can tell that the levels raised once Bedoya came off the bench in the last 2 games. How can you tell me that that guy shouldn't be starting? So these are really, really tough moments for Jim Curtin. But like I said, it's what you love to see. You had, for that first goal, a great ball by Jacob Glesnes to find Mikael Uhre, who then finds Quinn Sullivan, who then has the nice flick one to Jesus. Jesus's pass takes a deflection. It falls to Mikael, who should have had an assist on this play, but Gazlag's shot hits the post, and then Jesus Bueno is there for the tap-in. And that's what you want to see from the Union. You don't want to see no more of this conceding first in the first 15 minutes. You don't want to see slow starts by the Union. Scoring in the first 28 seconds in this game. You couldn't have started any better. You have 4 players crashing into the box. Players always ready for the rebound. And it doesn't have to be the prettiest of goals, but the movement and commitment to get into the box really played off for the Union's first chance in this game. I think it's huge for the Union to finally keep another clean sheet, which has been hard to come by this season. Andre Blake and the defense really weren't threatened all that much in this game. A lot of Monterrey's attacks went down Kai Wagner's side, which I thought he played excellent. 4 to 5 tackles, one interception, 7 ball recoveries, 7 out of 10 ground duels, won. Really great defensive game by Kai. I thought he had some good deliveries in this game from crosses and set pieces on the night too, which we've talked about on the podcast as well. He's been inconsistent all season long on set pieces. In the 44th minute, he plays a free kick into Daniel Gazdag, who has a free header, and he isn't able to get that header on target. Should have been a goal. The 51st minute, he plays a low-driven cross into the box towards the back post, and Quinn Sullivan's inches away from putting that in the back of the net. He slides, tries to connect to the ball, but the ball just came to him way too fast and just inches away. And maybe this performance helps because the Union switched back to the diamond, what they're used to. No issues defensively. Everyone knows their job in the midfield. And the link-up play with the forwards was excellent. And I saw a lot of people saying before this match started, oh, this is the lineup that the Union should have thrown out against Miami. Why did Jim Curtin get too cute? And I'm sure after that Miami game, Jim Curtin thought the same thing you guys are thinking. I should have played this formation from the get-go. And it's funny because I remember talking to Jim in January at the coaches convention in Philly. And he says, yeah, we're going to experiment with 3 in the back. We're going to have roster flexibility. We're going to change things up. And it's all great to hear that. And we started the season with 4-4-2. Like, all right, Jim, where's the rotation? Where's the change of lineups? And then we get back to playing a 4-3-2-1 at times, play a 4-2-3-1, and then Jim eventually introduces the 3-5-2, and everybody loses their mind. So Jim has tried to be flexible this season with the formations, with the tactics. But at the end of the day, isn't it funny that the diamond just looks like it's the best? And Jim said it during the week that he knows what formation's best for this club, and that's the diamond. And it makes sense, right? Because that's what Ernst Tanner and Jim Curtin have built the last couple years. They're looking for players that can fit into the diamond. They're looking for characteristics and players that are going to shine in a 4-4-2 diamond formation. And so when you get away from that and try tinkering with the formation, okay, it's going to take players a little time to adjust when all you've done the last 4 or 5 years is preach 4-4-2 diamond, working on the pressing cues on the diamond. This is how we're going to play out of the diamond. And not saying that these players can't learn different formations because they're professional players. They absolutely can. But it's just funny that you go back to the diamond and you get results. We see Jesus Bueno playing the right side in the diamond. Looks good. Where does that leave Ali Bedoya? Jack McGlynn's getting more and more comfortable on the left-hand side in the diamond. Where does that leave Leon Flock? So a lot of competition here for this group in the midfield, but it's good to have. And I'll be curious to see what Jim Curtin does this upcoming Saturday down in DC. Does he go back with the diamond? Does he play 3 in the back again against DC? A lot of choices. You hope that Jim goes back and keeps using the diamond. And then once the diamond doesn't work, the Union get a couple losses with that formation, and then people are going to say, oh, you got to switch out of this, Jim. people are never satisfied. Never, never, never satisfied. But those are kind of my overall thoughts from this game. I guess for players that I want to specifically mention, Mikael Uhre and Jack McGlynn. We'll start with Mikael first. And I got a couple good sound bites from Mikael after the game that I think are worth playing for you guys. They're not super long. Jim Curtin came out with some really good praise for Mikael after the game that he had. But before we play them, I guess I'll give my thoughts quickly on Mikael, and then we can go ahead and discuss each of the clips that I'll play for you guys. I thought it was great to see Mikael play all 90 minutes on the night. I don't think there should be any questions about his fitness levels. He proved that he could play 90 minutes. We saw it from the first minute to the last minute until he was substituted out. He was running around all night long, linking up well with Quinn and the midfielders. A lot of dirty running by both forwards, not just by Mikael. Both Quinn Sullivan had a huge game too, I thought. And it's interesting to me where if you go back and watch Mikael's time with Brøndby, the run that he makes on the goal that he scored, that's the type of runs that he made all the time with Brøndby. And if he continues to make those runs, he's going to get goals. And I get it, right? The service hasn't always been there. He does make those runs, but the ball doesn't come to him quick enough, or he gets caught off sides because the timing's just not there on the passing in his run. And so Mikael has to find it in himself where he can have a performance like that every single game. And he doesn't even have to score, right? He doesn't have to score every game. And I'm not saying Mikael had a great game just because he scored. It's because what he did off the ball. It's because of his link-up play with Quinn Sullivan, with the midfielders, creating the space for other players to run into. And it just so happened last night that he gets rewarded by his run. Jack McGlynn with a terrific look. And we'll hear more about that pass from Jim Curtin here in a bit. But this is the type of performance you want Mikael to have every single game. And that's essentially what Jim Curtin said after the game.
Look, I say it all the time. We're only going to go as far as our strikers and Danny take us, right? We know what we are defensively as a group. We're pretty stable and organized. And that was a great performance from Mikael, right? Holding the ball up for us, combining a little bit more with our midfield, little knockdowns that let our back line move and let us breathe, right? Winning flicks, drawing fouls, all those things that you need a striker to do. And then obviously the run that he makes on the ball that Jack McGlynn plays, which is a world-class left foot, pass that Jack sees and very few people see. That's a striker's goal, to really go right at the heart of the defense, slide, get a goal. So again, I think this should be good for his confidence. All strikers, every striker in the world, the best ones, the Funes Moris, all the great strikers have dips and valleys in the course of their season. And we need Mikael to get hot. And when he gets hot, the goals start to fly in, and hopefully this is the start of that. Quinn came in and did a good job for us, buzzed around, created some things. I thought deserved the goal. It's funny on the goal. Why I was so angry was because I thought they called Quinn off, and he actually puts the flag up on Quinn mistakenly. But by doing that now, they review the whole play, and what they go back and they see is Kai is actually offsides to start the play, which I still argue that's a close one, but we'll see when we watch it again on the tape. So overall, good performance, good to score 3 goals, and I thought good to create a lot of opportunities and a lot of good chances. We still screwed up a lot of 3-on-2s that I'm angry about, but at the same time, good performance.
Yeah, so of course, Jim Curtin can't be completely satisfied, which is fine, right? I mean, it's always going to be hard for a team to have a 10 out of 10 performance. And on a night where the Union score 3 goals, can you nitpick? For sure. But Jim then corrected it and said, it's a good performance by us. And yeah, I mean, not many things to take away from this game. Like I said, I mean, this is a game that the Union should have won. A team that's playing their backups. I think there definitely would have been more questions asked if the Union lost to a Monterrey team that started all their backups. But The Union could have started the game better, like I said. A couple key points, takeaways from what Jim Curtin just said there. First thing that he said was, we're only as good as our strikers and Danny take us. And isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? Because who else? Who else is going to add goals in this team? Because I'm looking just at the MLS stats right now. 10 goals by Julian Carranza, 9 by Daniel Gazdag, 7 by Mikael Uhre. And then the next closest, 2 by Jose Martinez, 1 Jacob Glesnes, 1 Leon Flock. There's just nobody else that's contributing to this lineup other than those three. And so you hope that a player like Todd, who had a flawless debut, Jim Curtin said after the game. I mean, jeez, he's on there for 2 seconds. Saw him hustling for those 2 seconds. Doesn't make a wrong run at all. Couldn't have been a better debut by Ty Baribo. But it was nice to finally see him included on the bench for the Union. Hopefully, his MLS season debut will go better down in DC this Saturday. But when the front three aren't clicking, this team struggles. It's no secret. Because you occasionally get a goal by Jose Martinez, Kai Wagner, Jack McGlynn, Joaquin Torres, Chris Donovan, Andres Pereira, who's no longer here on loan with New York City. You're going to need Ty to have a big second half for the Union. You're going to need Quinn Sullivan to have a big second half for the Union. You're going to need midfielders to step up and score goals when the front three aren't clicking. Bedoya, 2 goals off the bench. We know he can score goals, but we got to see more consistency. You heard Jim. He said we created a lot of chances. And to give you guys an exact number, the Union throughout Leagues Cup created 15 chances. That's the second most in the competition. Nashville created 1 more with 16. Yeah, when you look at it, the Union created a lot of chances, but they also had 13 big misses in the competition, which was by far the most. And that's just because of the inconsistency from their front three. Jacob Glesnes has had a couple chances, couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. Chris Donovan's had a couple chances, can't put the ball in the back of the net. And so I think, and some people said to me after my last episode, they're like, oh man, you were so negative that episode, you were panicking. I don't think I was panicking. Was I negative? Yes, for sure. But I wasn't acting like the sky's falling down. I was just, upset, I think, that the Union got it wrong tactically. Because I'm not an idiot. The Union created a ton of chances against Miami. They just couldn't finish. And that's where you guys are allowed to be concerned. If the Union aren't creating chances, then be concerned. But that's not been the issue at all with this team this whole season. Yes, it's not a season like last year, but they're still creating. It's just they're not finishing. And maybe the Union's front three hit their peak. Like they overachieved. I think we could probably admit that a little bit, that Carranza, Gazdag, and Uhre overachieved a little bit last year. But if you go ahead and look, they are creating. And so you hope those issues get corrected with 11 games to go in MLS regular season play. Because this team will struggle. Jim said he was mad that they messed up a couple 3-on-2 chances in this game. And he's right. There were a couple chances in this game where they messed up. They didn't get the transitions right. But at the end of the day, as long as the Union are creating chances, they're going to give you a chance in every single game. Jim also talked about Quinn Sullivan there. He mentioned that he had a chance to score. Ball goes in the back of the net. They say offsides, and it wasn't really Quinn that was offsides. They're saying that it was initially Kai Wagner, but nonetheless, no goal for the Union. I mentioned earlier there was a chance that Quinn had inches away in the second half on Kai's low-driven cross in the second, and can't put it in the back of the net. But at least he made that right run. At least we finally saw somebody make a back post run. Because there was moments in this game too where I was like, oh my gosh, we're playing the ball. We're crossing the ball in. Somebody's on the back post. That's a goal. Like, it's the little things you can be annoyed about, for sure. And I'm not totally upset because at least those chances are getting created. It's just people got to find ways to get into better positions. People got to finish better. There was a play in the first half where Kai wins the ball, finds McGlynn, who just rolls a soft pass down the line to Daniel Gazdag, who then plays an outside of the right foot pass down the left channel for Quinn to run into. The pass was a little bit too much from Gazdag. Good defending by Monterrey, but it was a great run by Quinn Sullivan there, because if Quinn would have got to that ball, and then you had Mikael Uhre to his right, who had just made a terrific run. Quinn slots that ball in, and now Mikael Uhre is in a 1v1 situation against the goalkeeper. And so this team is going to need the Quinn Sullivans, the Chris Donovan, who had a header saved, and then Ali puts the ball in the back of the net. You're going to need players like that to come off the bench and provide a spark when this team needs a spark, when they need a goal. You need players that are going to be hungry, pushing people in the starting lineup and making people feel like, yeah, I'm not guaranteed a starting spot in the squad. Because the only people you can argue, in my opinion, that have a guaranteed spot are Kai Wagner, Andre Blake, Daniel Gazdag, and Jose Martinez. Every other spot, I think, is up for grabs, which is crazy to say that about Julian Carranza after the season he had last year, but he's been inconsistent this year. The center backs, you would probably argue, too, that their spots are locked in. So, okay, yeah, majority of the spots in this lineup are guaranteed. Your two forwards, your two outside eights, and your right back spots. So 5 spots that aren't guarantees every week, I'd say. So make people feel like I could potentially not start this game. I've got to bring my all in training. I got to make the most of my opportunities of the minutes given in games. And if that does happen, that's only going to make the Union stronger and better. And hopefully, of course, right? You hope Jim does a good job managing minutes of players so they don't get worn out. But before we play Mikael's thoughts on the fatigue level in this group, I asked Mikael if he felt any pressure in this game with no Julian Carranza in the lineup. And this is what he had to say about that and Quinn Sullivan's performance.
I mean, there's always pressure. But yeah, I think Quinn also came in and gave some really good energy, running around like a maniac. He really fought so well for the team. So yeah, and also maybe a little bit unlucky not getting a goal as he maybe deserved. So I mean, there's always pressure.
Yeah, and it's good to hear Jim Curtin, Mikael Uhre singing the praises of Quinn Sullivan. That kind of performance you need all the time from Quinn. Coming off the bench, or if it's a spot start, you need him pushing these forwards, making Mikael and Julian Carranza uncomfortable. And Mikael saying, yeah, there's always pressure, which he's right. There is pressure because his spot's not guaranteed. Julian Carranza's spot's not guaranteed. Tyber Rebo could easily take that spot if Chris Donovan or Quinn Sullivan find form and they're constantly putting the ball in the back of the net. You're not going to not start them. And so, yes, Mikael Uhre had a lot of pressure coming into this game with no Julian Carranza. We know that Mikael hasn't scored since the LA Galaxy game back in July. And he gets a goal. But even if he didn't get a goal last night, I think it was a terrific performance. You heard Jim Curtin say that his build-up play with the midfielders, his hold-up play. A really, really strong game by Mikael on the night. And then finally, I asked Mikael, well, you guys have played a lot of games this season with all the different competitions you've been in. What's the fatigue level like in the group?
No, I actually think people are doing quite well. People are feeling well, and obviously there's going to be injuries throughout the season, and people are going to be fatigued and stuff, but that's when you get the chance for the next guy to show up. So, that's what it's all about. We have a really good group, really good squad. We also see the players coming in from the bench making impact. So, yeah.
That's exactly it. You want players coming off the bench, the next man up mentality. You've got to have players that are hungry, that are energized. Because Mikael's right. Jim says it too. Injuries are always going to happen. It's a part of the sport. Do I agree that, this team's not tired? Only the players can truly tell you that, right? I think there are moments in the game where you can see maybe the players really weren't running as hard. They weren't trying as hard. Miami's certainly an example of that. Red Bulls is certainly an example of that. DC United's certainly an example of that. The Union didn't match the energy levels of all three of those teams. And so whatever these players have to do mentally to get it right, to come out swinging just like they did against Monterrey. And yes, it helps that the Union scored, but even if they didn't score, if they would have just created that chance and they're pressing, I think we would all take that. We would all agree that's all we want. It is to show that you're going to fight. You're going to fight for each other. You're going to fight for the badge. You're going to fight for that coaching staff, the fans. If you give a performance like that every single game, the fans will take that. And it's eventually going to lead to goals. So as long as the Union continue to create chances, I don't think people should worry too much. Yes, you can worry a little bit because the finishing hasn't been great. But it's a bigger issue if the chances aren't getting created in the first place. Speaking of creating chances, Jack McGlynn, you guys heard Jim's praise from the pass from Jack to Mikael. And it's so evident to me that McGlynn isn't long here in MLS. He's definitely going to be the next homegrown player sold. And the passing and vision of this kid at 20 years old, that's stuff that you see from a well-seasoned player. And he's already that good at 20 years old. At 20 years old, his passing and vision's top-notch. And Jack said that when Gazag's out, he does get to play a more attacking style, gets to play more further up. And that's what he likes doing. But he's comfortable playing anywhere in the midfield. And the biggest knock on Jack is that, can he be better defensively? He's not the fastest of players, which you don't have to be fast to be a good soccer player. Scouts look for players that stand out. And what stands out about Jack McGlynn? It's his passing ability. It's his vision. You cannot teach a player to have a left foot as good as Jack McGlynn. You can't teach a player to have vision as good as Jack McGlynn. That's all on Jack McGlynn. And this guy has been so impressive this season, last season. He's come a long way from a 17-year-old that was extremely skinny, getting pushed around off the ball, to a player that can hold his own now out there on the field. And this is what Jim Curtin said with rumors out there that Jack McGlynn could potentially leave the Union in the near future. Where can Jim see McGlynn winding up in?
My hope is that it's to a league, Holland, it comes to mind, where it's about passing and everybody wanting the ball and good attacking. So he can play anywhere. I believe that. But his skill set is certainly with the ball. He's really, really elite at that. And I think all you have to do is take a snapshot of the goal that he sets up tonight. And he sees the game a little different than most. Not many humans see that, even I didn't see it. And I was literally standing on the sideline. So great pass. And again, I can't take any credit for that, but he's special, man. Really special.
Yeah, he is special, and he's only going to get better. Like I said, if he can continue to get better defensively, would I be shocked if he's gone this winter? Absolutely not. And so that's why you got to enjoy him while you have him, Union fans. The only player in Union history that I can think of that has better passing ability than McGlynn is maybe Harris Medunjanin. And look, that's a player that's playing in Holland, in the Netherlands. Because what's the big thing about Harris? Is he great defensively? Absolutely not. How many times would you guys count how many times he's pointing on the field? A lot. Jack McGlynn is very similar to Harris Medunjanin. Could I see him winding up at an Ajax or a PSV? Absolutely. A top-class team in the Netherlands, I can 100% see. We see Ricardo Pepe already at PSV, scored a goal in his debut, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Could Jack McGlynn become his new teammate? It's very possible, but those are my thoughts, my takeaways from this game against Monterrey, from Leagues Cup. So not many more talking points, I think, need to be spoken about in this game or in this competition. If I forgot anything, if there's something you guys wanted me to bring up, let me know on social media at Free Kick Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. As always, wherever you get your podcasts, rate and review on iTunes, on Spotify. I don't think you can do it on Google. Maybe you can. And check out the YouTube page, as always, youtube.com/freekickpod. Can't wait to start getting back into those goal breakdown videos with MLS play resuming. And hopefully we get a lot more goals, a lot more bangers. And can't wait to show you guys this new feature from the software that I use, the tracking ability. So it's going to be really cool for you guys to check out and follow specific players around when they have a tracking feature around them. So really exciting stuff for the second half of this MLS season. I'll be appearing on the United States of Soccer podcast, I believe it's called, with a guy named Michael Willis, I believe it is. Believe that too, DM me. But that should be recorded on Monday. You guys are listening to this podcast on Sunday night, Monday morning. And so I don't think Michael does a live podcast. If it is, then I'll tweet it out, let you guys know. But look for me on that podcast. And again, as always, I'm going to try and get a commentator on for DC United. I have to email some folks right after this episode, and hopefully I get a response back from somebody, and we can get back to doing our weekly match preview episodes, which we have not done in a very long time. I do miss doing those episodes dearly, but that's pretty much it here for this episode. So until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.